In today's episode, I'll be talking about the governor of Puerto Rico's chat. I'll be talking about an indictment filed against government officials last week. And I'll also be covering why current protests here in the archipelago and abroad are very important. Let's begin. Hello, my name is Andrew Mercado-Vázquez, and welcome to the PRF Review, the show based on the podcast Puerto Rico Forward, which you support through Patreon. So thank you so much for helping us out with your contributions. You can listen to us on Patreon, of course, on iTunes, on Spotify, other platforms where you get your media from, and also YouTube. So look us up, and everywhere and anywhere, we're probably there. As I mentioned before, we're going to be talking about recent events that are very important. Never has there been a situation like what's happening right now in the archipelago of Puerto Rico. Currently, the people of Puerto Rico, the majority, want the current governor of Puerto Rico, Ricardo Rosselló Nevares, out of office. They want him to be impeached or they want him to resign. Why is that? Well, let's cover two instances, two events that I think served as accelerants to a fire that has been burning for years within the people of Puerto Rico's hearts. First off, we have an indictment that was filed against former Secretary of Education Julia Kelleher, and we also have that indictment naming Angela Avila Marrero. She's was the acting executive director of the Puerto Rico Health Insurance Administration. These are federal charges being levied against these two and four other individuals that are simply government contractors. We're talking about conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit money laundering, conspiracy to theft. These are serious accusations that are of corruption. Two things I want to highlight. First, Julia Kelleher is not from Puerto Rico. Okay, so we can't use the narrative of Puerto Rico's culture of corruption to explain Julia Kelleher. She was born in the States. She was raised in the States. She came to Puerto Rico to fill this position. She was in that position for like about 3 years. If your moral compass is distorted, thrown off with 3 years of exposure to something, that means it just wasn't in line to begin with. Let's say that. Okay, so that's the first thing to raise on that issue. Second, this indictment might not have been possible if it weren't for the work of a government official here in Puerto Rico within the Puerto Rico's Department of Education that was the first to raise a flag, to notice something suspicious and report it. So it was a government official in Puerto Rico, the person responsible for stepping forward and saying something wrong is happening here, and then this is the fruit of that person's labor. We have an indictment filed against these individuals that if true, deserve the full weight of the law to fall upon them. So yes, there's corruption in Puerto Rico, but there's also efforts within the people of Puerto Rico and the government of Puerto Rico to really eradicate corruption. So you have both sides. We need to give both sides their merit. Okay? So that's the indictment, essentially. The governor's chat. Now, this one's nasty. Why is it nasty? Well, it's because the governor of Puerto Rico, his cabinet members, and other non-government officials engaged in conversations that can only be described as disgusting, as horrible discussions that highlight misogyny, homophobia, sexism. They even engage in body shaming. So these are conversations, these are exchanges that are apprehensible, that they're just horrible for someone to find light in them, to find that they're fun or that they're a method to relieve stress, which is what the governor of Puerto Rico said that this was. This chat was basically, for him, a way to relieve stress. His own words. First off, let's take something out of the way. This chat is real. This chat is valid. Why? Because the governor said it was. It's that simple. The governor of Puerto Rico, which is the person that arguably is most affected by this chat, has come forth and said that it's real, that it is not a fake. So, it's not fake news. This is real. What else is very important to know about this chat? Well, other than how offensive it is, it also highlights individuals, government officials, engaging in conversations that are highly suspicious. First off, we have a lot of conversation about certain journalists and certain members of the legislative body and certain organizations that are a problem for the current administration's image. And there's talks within the chat about how to put pressure on certain individuals that are kind of being a burden, or how to put pressure and influence other organizations and other people that have been active in criticizing the governors, and the current administration's policies. So these are individuals that have real access to real power. These government officials in this chat could make someone's life a living hell if they wanted to. So that is highly concerning. The other thing that's very concerning that just speaks to the morality of these individuals is there's a conversation where they talk about, they're laughing about the idea of shooting dead the Carmen Durin Cruz, which is the mayor of San Juan. So this not only is this infantile, this is dangerous behavior. This is behavior that highlights the way that these individuals behave, just signals to a distorted view of things. What I think is the most concerning situation that comes from this chat is that sensitive government, confidential government information was being shared on this chat, and this chat had members that were not government officials. These were people that were simply in charge of managing the governor and his administration's image. So we're talking about publicists, we're talking about people that specialize in this type sort of thing. So we have non-government officials receiving confidential official government information to be used for who knows what purpose. So that's very concerning. Okay? So the result of these two events has been that the people of Puerto Rico have demanded the governor of Puerto Rico to step down from office, either to be impeached or to resign. What has happened? The governor of Puerto Rico has refused to step down. The governor of Puerto Rico is not accepting the will of the people, and the leaders of the legislative bodies have not commenced a process of impeachment. So what we have is a governor that refuses to accept the will of the people, that no longer want him to be in office. That, I think, is one of the big detonants in this situation. Other than the two situations that I mentioned earlier, the hubris of the governor of Puerto Rico, I think, has activated the anger and this reaction of the people of Puerto Rico to take control of the current situation, to take control of the current administration, and to remove someone that the people of Puerto Rico no longer believe represents their values. Okay? This is very important for the people of Puerto Rico and their history. Never before, as I mentioned before, has there been such a movement to impeach a governor of Puerto Rico. And it's not only happening in Puerto Rico. There's protests happening in the archipelago, but there's also protests happening in the States and abroad. There's protests happening in Washington, D.C., in New York, in Chicago, Connecticut, and other places. Why? Because the people of Puerto Rico aren't just people that live in Puerto Rico. The people of Puerto Rico are everywhere, and they're moving in solidarity. And I believe that this is an important moment because of Puerto Rico's colonial background. Puerto Rico is a colony of the U.S. It has been so for over 120 years, and before that, over 400 years with Spain. Puerto Rico has never, since the people of Puerto Rico have conceived themselves as people of Puerto Rico, have never been able to determine their own future in a complete manner. So, within the constraints of colonialism, what little power they have is to name government officials. Governor Ricardo Rosselló seems to be denying the people of Puerto Rico even that small amount of control over their own archipelago. Even that small amount of control and influence on policy. So the people of Puerto Rico have stood up against that. They're demanding for Ricardo Rosselló to step down from office or to be impeached, and they're calling out government officials that are behaving in such a way where they're not responding to the will of the people. So this is a very important event, but I want to highlight how important it is to build on the background of Puerto Rico's colonial reality, not just take this story from 2 weeks ago or from a week ago. Let's take this current situation and what's happening, and let's remind ourselves of how unjust, unfair, and undemocratic Puerto Rico's colonial situation has been. And the current administration seems to be denying the people of Puerto Rico what little control they have over their government, which is to name the people in certain government positions. So I believe this is historic. I believe that the people of Puerto Rico have been awoken to a passion to take control of a situation that honestly could have been avoided with the governor of Puerto Rico simply resigning and understanding that he is no longer fit to be a governor, that he no longer represents the will of the people. And by the way, the very people of Puerto Rico that put the governor in the place he is want him to be removed, and he should respect that. So we're going to stay tuned here in PRF to current events. Please continue following our content, and please remember, when it comes to the Puerto Rico issue, usually things are a little bit more than what they seem at first. So keep that in mind. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening. Y que viva Puerto Rico.